Welcome everyone to this evening's virtual Cabinet meeting hosted by Bassetlaw District Council. Given the current challenging situation that we all face following the outbreak of COVID-19, the law has been changed to allow councils to host virtual meetings rather than requiring councillors to be present in the committee chamber when making decisions. Now, this keeps everyone safe by maintaining a social distance and also allows business to be conducted in an appropriate manner. Now, it's very important that all councillors can hear each other, and so what I will do in a moment is invite Cabinet members in alphabetical order to introduce themselves, and in doing so test their broadband connection. First of all, if we could turn to Councillor Dukes, please.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. My connection's working just fine. I can hear everyone clearly. Councillor Lee.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Scawthorne.
I believe he's possibly on his way, Chair, so perhaps try in a little while.
Thank you, will do. Councillor Shaw.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor White.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Now, we do have liaison members present this evening. I'll turn first to Councillor Brand.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Fielding.
Present, Chair.
Thank you very much. And we also have the Bassetlaw Council Armed Forces Champion with us this evening, Councillor Eaton.
Present, Chair.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Councillor Scawthorne has joined us at this point.
Present, Chair. Sorry about the late come.
Not at all. Glad that you're able to make it.
Hey, Chair.
Now, we also have a number of officers in attendance with us to support the meeting this evening. I'll turn to the list and go through the list of names as I have them in front of me. First of all, Mr. Neil Taylor.
Good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Good evening. Mr. Armiger.
Yes, good evening, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. David Hill.
Good evening, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Wormold.
Yes, good evening, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Brown.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Alison Craig.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Craig Taylor.
Yes, I'm present, Chair.
Thank you. Karen Childs. Not present this evening. And also supporting us, Linda Dorr.
Present, Chair.
And facilitating the meeting and dealing with all technology, Mr. Lavender.
Present, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Chair, if I could just add, I think Karen Childs is with us in the meeting.
Yes, present, Chair.
There we go.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Now, if during the meeting we do lose connection and the meeting becomes inquorate, then or the live streaming fails in some way, then what I will do is adjourn the meeting for up to 5 minutes just to allow for the connection to be re-established. There are confidential items on this evening's agenda, and when we reach that point, the live streaming will be brought to an end. And at that stage, members will be asked to ensure that we continue to comply with the Code of Conduct. Now, given that this is a virtual meeting, there is no corporate responsibility to detail any fire procedures as we ordinarily would do. However, I would ask that and simply highlight that this committee is being live streamed on social media. So all participants, just please be aware of your actions and take appropriate safety precautions from the place where you're joining the meeting from. And also, just to help with background noise, if I could remind participants to switch off the microphone when not speaking, that'll be helpful. Now, agenda item 1 is the suspension of council procedure rules for up to 15 minutes to allow for questions from members of the public. and members of the public have been given the opportunity to ask a question at the meeting, though I understand that no requests have been received, and I'll just double check that with the committee clerk.
Yes, I can confirm, Chair. No questions have been received for this evening's Cabinet meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And next I'll turn to agenda item 2, which is apologies. And have any apologies been received, please?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Liaison Member Councillor Mike Quigley for this evening's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 3 is to receive declarations of interest by members and officers. And I'll just check with the committee clerk whether any declarations have been received at this point.
Chair, no, I haven't received any declarations from either members or officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If during the meeting a member or officer realises that there is an interest that needs to be declared, please do so as soon as possible, and we'll be able to deal with that. Agenda item 4 is minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of October, and that is to be found at pages 7 through to 16. And I will ask at this point whether Cabinet members are happy to accept those as an accurate record.
Happy, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there any dissent from the adoption of those minutes? I'll take that as a no. Agenda item 5 is the minutes for action and implementation list to be found at pages 17 to 18 of the agenda. And are there any comments or observations in relation to that agenda item that anyone wishes to raise? I will take that as a no, and then turn to agenda item 6, which is the outstanding minutes list to be found at pages 19 to 23 of the agenda, and ask if there are any comments or observations regarding that item. I'll take that as a no, and simply move then to agenda item 7, which is the forward plan to be found at pages 25 to 28 of the agenda. And I will ask if there are any comments or observations, first of all, in relation to the forward plan. And if not, I will ask if there is any dissent from the adoption of that forward plan. Again, I'll take that as a no, and the forward plan is to be endorsed. Thank you. Agenda item 8 is a report from the Cabinet Member for Finance. It's agenda item 8A and relates to fees and charges 2021 to 22, and is a key decision number 848, and is to be found at pages 29 through to 92. And at this point, I will hand over to Councillor Evans to outline the report, please.
Chair, sorry, it's Steve Brown here. Can I just interrupt? Can we just pause for a minute? Can I just seek confirmation that this is being broadcast? I'm just looking on through our website and I can't find it. So
It's on the YouTube site.
it's under Council and Democracy. Forthcoming meetings. There's a meeting schedule that has a link on it. It's showing the 23rd of November.
Thank you for calling out, Steve, by the way. I wouldn't have been able to spot that comment, I'm afraid. So thank you for raising it.
Yeah, I've now found it on the YouTube site, so it is there. It's just it wasn't a link through from the council official site.
So I think on that basis, and Steve will confirm this, if we know it is in effect being broadcast live, then we are in compliance with the regulations, and I think we can proceed.
Yes, Steve, I agree.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for the interruption.
Not at all. Important that we ensure that this meeting is being conducted in the appropriate way. Following that clarification, therefore, I will hand over to Councillor Evans to outline the report relating to fees and charges 2021 to 22. Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recognise that when setting fees and charges, Council has to acknowledge the corporate charging policy, the current economic climate, the funding gap, and the need to keep pace with inflation. A balance has to be struck that provides a stable base on which to regulate the budget for 21-22. For the corporate charging policy, the key elements are explained from paragraph 3.3 to 3.8, and these include standard charges, concessionary charges, discounts, and market intelligence. Paragraph 3.9 lists the proposed discounts with a strong focus on markets. With regards to pricing principles, consideration has been given to the underlying economic climate. It is proposed that for 21-22, officers should apply a minimum 3.1% increase to their locally set fees and charges. This is taking account of the payroll inflation of 2% and the consumer price index of 1.1% from July this year. However, it was not considered feasible to apply the minimum increase for some service areas. 0% increase is applied to Retford Market, Worksop Market, and to car park hourly charges, along with some minor income streams, although for car park seasonal tickets, these have been increased. Furthermore, a below inflation rate has been applied to some other service areas. The proposals are detailed within the appended fees and charges schedule. Chair, it should be noted that these proposed fees represent what is believed to be the best fee to maximise income after considering market intelligence. Members know that within the corporate charging policy, both statutory set by government and discretionary or locally set fees and charges are set out in the fees and changes schedule. For concessions and discounts, the charges are set to comply with the recommended levels in this report, and this ensures transparency and meets equality and diversity requirements. Details of the larger income generating areas can be seen at paragraph 3.16 to paragraph 3.24. A number of new charges will apply from the 1st of April 21-22, and these have been highlighted for easy reference. Members will note the fees and charges schedule now includes housing services, and these relate to both the housing revenue account and the housing general fund. Chair, there are 3 recommendations at 7.1, 7.2 and 7.3. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Mr. Hill, is there anything more you'd wish to add at all?
Only very briefly, Chair, that this is the first of the reports that will be coming before members to set the budgets for 21-22, and a very difficult set of reports. Councillor Evans has already highlighted the fine balance that we've got to strike between a very important income stream for the council and being sensitive towards those who've suffered most through COVID, such as people on the market. Happy to answer any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Are there any comments, questions or observations in relation to this item at all? I can't see anyone indicating, although I'll defer to officers. Oh, Councillor Brand.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just waiting to see if any cabinet members were wanting to ask questions first, because my question is slightly off at a tangent, but does relate to car parking. And I just wonder whether there's going to be a concession on car parking this Christmas, in the light of the difficulties that people have had and so on. I can see that Councillor Evans is nodding, so thank you for that.
There's a nod, but I don't know if you want a bit more detail on that from Councillor Evans.
Well, if she's able to give it, that would be great. If not, I'll just wait for the announcement to come out from the council. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Councillor Evans, if you want to add anything more, then feel free to.
I'll have to ask Mr Hill to remind me the date it starts. I know it ends on the 1st of January, but it's very similar as to last year's.
Okay, that's no, thank you very much. There will be information coming out in relation to that announcement in the near future. And I do understand it's rather a mirror image of last year's arrangements from memory. So that hopefully will be well received. So that's great. Thank you. I'll just want to double check if there are any other comments, questions or observations at all. If not, I'll turn to the recommendations as outlined by Councillor Evans, and ask Cabinet colleagues if there is any dissent or disagreement with adopting those recommendations. No, so I'll take those as carried. Thank you very much. And next, I will turn to agenda item 8B, which is budget monitoring and capital programme update report to the 30th of September 2020, key decision 860, to be found at pages 93 through to 122. And again, I will hand over to Councillor Evans to outline the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, this is an update on Council's second quarter spending position for 2021, and it's relevant up to the 30th of September. Starting with the General Fund Revenue Budget, the table at 3.7 is a summary of the second quarter position across all portfolios, showing a predicted overspend of 745,000. A summary of the main elements affecting the General Fund Revenue Budget, including the high impact of COVID-19, can be seen in the table at 3.9, and further analysis can be seen at Appendix 1. I ask members to note that the overspend between quarter 1 and quarter 2 has moved by 607,000, as can be seen in the table at paragraph 3.12. Members should also note that an overspend of 745,000 will reduce balances of the 31st of March 2020 from 3.569 million to 2.824 million, a significant reduction from quarter 1. Close budget monitoring is in place. Turning to fees and charges, if you look at the table at 3.15, we can see that the out-term forecast for all income streams at quarter 2 is for an underachievement of 20,000. The table relates to service issues only and does not include the impact of COVID-19. All income lost because of COVID-19 is recorded separately for the benefit of government and any claims council may be entitled to make. For the housing revenue account, there is a predicted overspend of 17,000, and the details are clearly mapped out in the table at 3.18. But basically, there is a COVID loss of 444,000 offset by savings of 427,000. And the movement between quarter 1 and quarter 2 can be seen in the table at 3.22. Regarding COVID-19 and the impact on council finances, Chair, although this report seeks to quantify lost income and additional costs, council is dealing with a complicated and ever-changing situation. With regards to costs, some have been incurred, others are estimated. As for lost income, some is an actual based on trends, other an estimate of what we will potentially be losing. Council has received a number of government grants, but is still carrying COVID-related cost pressures because full reimbursement from government is looking unlikely. Members can see eligibility parameters and pricing principles applied by government at paragraph 3.23. Moving to the capital programme and expenditure for both the general fund and the housing revenue account, the initial capital budget for 2021 totalled 22.921 million. Paragraph 3.27 table 1 shows a reconciliation of approved budget movements, increasing the capital programme to 36.221 million. There are now additions and amendments requiring approval for the general fund and the housing revenue account. And a summary can be found at paragraph 3.28, and further details can be seen in Appendix 3. These approvals will increase the capital programme by 4.646 million, giving a new total of 40.857 million. And funding has already been secured for these projects. Chair, the current level of capital expenditure at the end of Q2 is 2.749 million, or 8% of the total budget. Expenditure for the year is expected to be around 21 million. Slippage is predicted to be approaching 15 million. The impact of COVID has meant a significant reduction in capital spend, and an update of all capital projects can be seen at Appendix 4. The manner of resourcing the current capital programme budget is shown at Table 3. Members know capital receipts are low, and this was a key consideration when the capital programme for 2021 to 24-25 was developed. And Table 4 gives a clear picture of Council's capital receipts. Regarding Treasury management, I can report there has been no long-term or short-term borrowing this quarter. The table at paragraph 3.39 outlines loans held by Council. For investments, at the 30th of September, Council had 21.980 million invested, as shown in the table at paragraph 3.42. Members know investments are affected by the Bank of England base rate, which currently stands at 0.1%. Sorry about that. I'll say that again. Members know investments are affected by the Bank of England base rate, which currently stands at 0.1%. Therefore, the projected investment outturn position at year end is predicted to show a shortfall of 73,000. I can also report that Council has operated within the Treasury limits. There are no issues to highlight regarding prudential indicators. Chair, I remind members that for the General Fund budget, during the 2021 budget setting process, 1.3 million was removed from the base budget in order to set a balanced budget. A detailed analysis of budget variances is shown in Appendix 1. However, should the current projected overspend of 745,000 occur, a transfer from general reserves will be required. Similarly, for the housing revenue account, if the predicted 17,000 overspend becomes a reality, this will also require a transfer from reserves at year end. There are 4 recommendations, Chair, starting at 7.1, and I apologise for the voice. Thank you, Chair.
Not at all, Councillor Evans. I think that a huge amount of detail to be covered. Thank you. I'll turn next to Mr. Hill, if there's anything that he may wish to add at all.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think this is the first real monitoring report that really does show the impact of COVID on the council's finances, on the HRA, the capital spend, and on the general fund too. This is obviously a picture at the end of September, at the end of Q2, and it's showing 745,000 loss. I can report that since then, things do change quite quickly, and we're now at a position where we've got about a 620,000 loss. That is because the council tax and business rate recovery is a lot better now than it was. But also, just to illustrate how rapidly things change, the car parking income during this lockdown has fallen in November from 53% in October to 33% of what we would expect. So it swings and roundabouts, and we're still looking at about a £620,000 loss. I'm happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed for that additional information and context. I'll ask, first of all, I'll turn to Mr. Neil Taylor, Chief Executive, who's indicated there, so as to follow on, and then I'll turn to Cabinet colleagues who have indicated. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, times are very difficult for everybody at the moment, but the council's not just dealing with the day-to-day issues. So we are in the throes of converting the Mayfair Centre site into a new car park. Today we've sold Ebenezer Terrace, which is an old car park, and we are trying to ensure that we are upping the offer as far as the council's concerned, to make sure that we're not just focused on what's happening with COVID. And there'll be some other things that we'll be bringing to you in the new year, which hopefully will be of interest to yourselves and local residents. But the fundamental point is that I think we've heard in the last 48 hours with the collapse of Debenhams and also Arcadia, is that the structure of what we're dealing with is fundamentally changing. And I think whilst we can go on as we are, trying to make the best of it as a nation, it's getting to the point where I think there's going to have to be some fundamental changes, certainly to do with national non-domestic rates, because the amount of money that we get through this source is not going to be sustainable moving forward with all the changes that there are in society, which are probably going to be accelerated by the COVID experience this year, and also the impact of Brexit at the start of next year. So one of the things that I think would be helpful to do would be to raise these issues with the Local Government Association, so we can be at the forefront of this, looking forward and trying to make the best of what's going to come round, rather than focusing on some of the things that we're having to react to today. And I think the point of the contribution I want to make this evening is it's not just about reacting to all this, but it's trying to make the most of what we've got, change the offer as much as we can, and also look to the future and ensure that the council's financial footing going forward is in a very stable place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, and I fully support raising these issues with the Local Government Association, and to see if we can bring some collective forces together on that. I'll turn first to Councillor Shaw, then Councillor Dukes, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to record, first of all, my thanks to Councillor Evans and the team from Corporate Resources. It's two amazing reports under the circumstances. The amount of work that goes into this, and also to monitor as closely as they do, is quite incredible, and we feel like in safe hands. And I think it is unprecedented times, and as has been stated, COVID-19 is complicated and ever-changing situation. I was actually going to mention, Neil, about the rates, only in just as you said, really. I mean, it's Debenhams, but for Retford, yours little shop that's been there for 20 years is closing, and we're seeing more and more shops closing in the town centre, which is a real worrying time, but it's also worrying for finances as well. But I just wanted to just highlight that here at the cabinet meeting. But recording thanks for all the hard work with finances. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The shockwave that's going through the high street is not stopping anytime soon, I fear. Councillor Dukes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I firstly, like Councillor Shaw, would like to express my thanks for Mr Hill and his team, and indeed Councillor Evans, for the way in which they keep us up to date with the finances. It's really important that we have a handle on this, and I think if people have been looking at cabinet papers over the last 5 years or so, they will see that the financial prudence that this council puts up front and centre in everything that it does financially should be applauded. We are seeing many councils have financially struggling at the moment because they have made investments that have turned out not to be prudent. We have tried to make our investments, and I was in a meeting only this morning, locally, supporting local businesses, supporting local developments. The S80 partnership that has been in front of this cabinet before is an example of that, where profits are being made and will be put back into the council funds. But more importantly than that, they're offering local jobs. It is offering local support and working very closely with the bid team to improve Basset Law for its residents. And looking at those sorts of investments is really important. I absolutely agree that non-domestic rates need a review. We are going to massively have a massive issue in January, I think, around agriculture, and where we're going to see farmers struggling, and that needs to be taken into account from a rural perspective, and small rural businesses. It's not just the town centres, although I can see the Arcadia issues, but there are small rural businesses out there, people who have set up small rural businesses who are really struggling, and they shouldn't be forgotten either in this business rates review. And I think it's really important that we look at trying to move that to a profit-based system rather than a building-based system, which seems ludicrous to me in this day and age. So I think I'd like to express my thanks. I'd like to say where is the government with its promise that we had at the beginning of this crisis that no council would be out of pocket due to it? Can we hold them to account for that? Are we still asking the questions about that? I know it's difficult across the country, but we were promised, and we've done things under that promise to make sure that the residents of Basset Law are in a better situation than a lot of residents in the country. So we need to hold government to account for that promise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I will certainly say that wherever there's an opportunity to remind government about the commitments and the assurances that it has made, working with other authorities up and down the country, I've worked to ensure that Basset Law supports those joint reminders to government about the promises that it has made and reneged upon. I'll turn next to Councillor Scawthorne.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come in and thank the finance team and June for that report. It makes sober reading this time, I think, to see the issues that these finances are going to come up against. What I would like to do is thank them for their help, and look forward to the HRA report coming forward in June, and the capital programme coming forward as well. Sorry, not in June, in January. I know this is a busy time of year for finance with all the budgets coming forward on the January cabinet. and I just hope that everything's going well. I'd just like to convey a thanks from the housing team. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll turn to Councillor Evans and Mr. Hill just to take stock if there's anything you want to say in response to those comments that have been made by Cabinet colleagues at all.
I think it's just a question of wait and see.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yes. Just to add a little bit from me, yeah, it is very difficult. The budgets are very difficult. We're getting a steady trickle of information through from government, but as usual, it's some of it's quite unhelpful. The provisional local government finance settlement won't be till probably around about the 15th of December, which is 4 days after the reports go out for cabinet. So that will be very difficult to build that in. And another point that was raised about getting 100% money back, obviously not. On the fees and charges, they'll only give 75% back over the 5% threshold. And in the comprehensive spending review, they also announced that they would fund some of the irrecoverable council tax and business rate losses, and they added up to 75%. So again, we're going to bear 25% of those irrecoverable losses. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Dukes, I think I don't know if you've indicated again there. Not a problem.
Mistake.
Not a problem. I'll just double check if there are any other comments or observations. If not, I'll take that as a no, and thank everyone for the contributions that have been made. But I will move to the recommendation to be found at page 106 of the report, and now ask Cabinet colleagues if there is any dissent or disagreement with that those recommendations being approved. And I will take that as a no, in which case they are carried. Thank you. I'll move on therefore to agenda item 9, reports of the Cabinet Member for Health and Community Wellbeing, in particular 9A, which is the Equality Objectives 2016 to 2020. It's a progress update, and is a key decision 502 to be found at pages 123 to 144. And at this point, I'll hand over to Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. As Cabinet members will know, the Council is required by the Equality Act to publish information on an annual basis to demonstrate how it complies with its general duties to the protected groups. The annual report, which is in the appendix to this report, provides an account of the Council's activity over the last 12 months. It gives an update on progress against the Council's equality objectives. Apologise. These are setting out in 3.4 of the report. In regard to the 9 protected characteristics for the Equality Act, I would just like to point out that 1, gender, has been omitted by error from the report at paragraph 3.3.1. I would like this to be amended by virtue of the minute on this item, please. More important than the legal obligation is the real outcome that have been achieved. The attached report details a wide range of outcomes and demonstrates the work undertaken across the Council and with partner organisations to make a real difference in our communities. I would just like to highlight a few of the actions against the Council's equality objectives. Cabinet has a report later about the excellent response to the Bassett Law Conversations programme. Even in the COVID situation, the Council have been engaged with thousands of individuals and businesses over support and guidance. With the partners of BCVS and the Bassett Law Food Bank, we have provided vital support to many vulnerable people across the district. This has involved not only thousands of food parcels, prescriptions delivery and welfare packs. I would like to thank the many councillors who have played an active role in their communities supporting this essential support. Work has been ongoing to help and support people into the jobs market. Even through the use of virtual meetings, the Youth Council has remained active, and they help the council in the Holocaust memorial activities. The council has supported the Black Lives Matter campaign, which has highlighted some of the injustices that sadly still exist. I believe this report helps to put the equality and diversity into perspective. It shows how it involves us all, both as individuals and as communities. It demonstrates the real tangible benefits through the actions of the council, either directly or in partnership. The report will be available on the council's website, and hard copy version will be available through the Customer Services Centre. I move the recommendations that the annual report on equality and diversity be approved and published. I would also ask that be recorded that gender had been omitted from the list of protected characteristics given in paragraph 3.3.1 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, is there anything further you wish to add at all?
Nothing to add, thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. I will take it that amendment is at the forefront of our minds as well. Councillor Dukes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, can I first of all thank everyone for this report. The appendix, the document is very thorough and very clear. I just have one question around one of the tables in the report around our employees, and it's around gender and hours. And it does seem to me that we have an awful lot of female employees that are working part-time. And there are many more male employees working full-time. I was just wondering whether that imbalance was by default, or was it by design? How did it come around? That's my question. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll take that question first, if that's okay. I don't know if Councillor Shaw, you're able to assist on that, or whether it's able to be, whether others may be able to assist, but I'll turn to you first.
Yes, I can assist because I found the information out. It's a really good question, thank you. One of the key priorities of the council is to provide a good work-life balance for all employees, and one of the ways of achieving this is to offer flexible working options. The figures in the report show that more women than men do work part-time, and this reflects that more women than men make flexible working requests for part-time working, which the council in the majority of cases is able to agree and put in place. In fact, approximately 75% of flexible working requests are received from women employees. It is important to note that part-time does not mean of less value. In fact, the last gender pay gap data show that women on average are paid slightly more than men. I hope that covers that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much on that. Are there any other comments, questions, observations in relation to this item? I'll take that as a no, and therefore move to the recommendations as outlined at page 125 of the report, and ask Cabinet colleagues if there is any dissent from those recommendations being adopted. I take that as a no, and those are therefore adopted and carried. Thank you. Agenda item 9B is Equality and Diversity Strategy 2021 through to 2025. It is a key decision 860 and is to be found at pages 145 to 179. And I will hand over again to Councillor Shaw to outline the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Equality and Diversity Strategy for 2021 to 25. Our current equality objectives ended this year and have been revised. The Council's Equality and Diversity Strategy have been updated to cover a period 2021 to 2025. The strategy sets out the Cabinet's vision to combat inequalities in Bassetlaw and work towards a place where we can all have an equal opportunity to prosper, as set out in the Council plan. With regard to references to the 9 protective characteristics, these will be checked prior to publication. We are in unprecedented times. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed and amplified current underlying inequalities in society and made us aware of new dimensions. This will have a combined and unprecedented impact on our local economy, both on businesses and the workforce, and some parts of our communities who will be disproportionately impacted for the short, medium and long term. The Council has been acutely aware of the disproportionate impact of the virus, and the lockdown will have on a particular demographics such as older residents, those with pre-existing health conditions, in addition to residents that were already struggling for a variety of reasons: health, finance, housing. Other groups became vulnerable and more vulnerable. These include shielded residents, furloughed workers, key workers, those who are homeless, as well as the increased number of cases of domestic abuse. The Council have the statutory responsibility to house any person fleeing domestic abuse. And we're very proud of that. We are also have emerging data to suggest that BAME residents are disproportionately affected by COVID-19 too. This helps to demonstrate the relevance of the work and the actions undertaken by the Council. The strategy highlights our priority and follows from consultation that was undertaken. I move the recommendations that Cabinet approve the Equality and Diversity Strategy for 2021 to 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, anything you wish to add at all?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I will ask for comments or observations from members. I think Councillor White indicated first, and then I think Councillor Scawthorne, and then Councillor Dukes.
Okay, thank you. I very much welcome this report. I think the data that's contained within it will underpin a lot of the work that we do in the years to come. So, and it certainly reflects the levels of poverty, child poverty, and how the population has changed in recent years. We were talking earlier about the impacts of COVID-19 on the finances of the council and on the economy. And I think as we come out of COVID-19, I think the impact will tell. We'll be able to physically see the impact on our local population, particularly in those areas that are identified where there's already high levels of poverty. And as a council, we will have a responsibility to work with those communities to address and see how we can make those lives easier. And I think these statistics will help us target that work, and we know where we need to focus our energy and work within the community.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What I will do is Councillor Shaw, I'll turn to you after these contributions if there's anything you want to say in response at all. Councillor Scawthorne.
Thank you, Chair. I too welcome this report and the way it sets out our hopes for the future. What I don't like, Chair, is a sobering reading of the statistics on page 163, child poverty. Through no fault of our own, these are only estimates. The official child poverty statistics for this period will not be available till 2022. The next release of these statistics, due to be published in the coming months, will only cover the year up to 31st of March 2020. In other words, up to the beginning of COVID-19. What we know now about the current level of child poverty is therefore limited. We know that many families have lost income as a result of COVID-19 based on the National Representatives of Household Survey taken at the end of April. It is estimated that 88,000 children have seen a parent lose their job. 1.2 million children were the families in a family where the parents have been furloughed, and 2 million children were the families in families where the parents' working hours have been reduced. This means that well over 3 million children where the households were between 20% of earnings, the furlough rates, and 47% of earnings, that means universal credits replacement rates, have been lost. Some of these children will have been living in poverty already, but it's not clear how many. Furthermore, as mentioned above, a recent report by IPPR has attempted to predict what has happened to child poverty as a result of COVID-19. It is suggested that the total number of children now living in relative poverty is 4.5 million, an increase of 200,000 compared to 2018 and 19. Chair, these aren't my results. These are the results of the Childhood Commissioner, who reports to government. These are figures that the government have known for some time, yet they still voted against giving children free school meals, our lower paid people free school meals. And it took a footballer to shame the government into changing their decision so that these kids will have a Christmas dinner. First-hand experience I have of kids coming knocking on the door asking to be fed. And I know not only at my youth club does that happen, as in Burcoats and Harworth, they work at soup kitchen most time. I say soup kitchen because really that's what it is. Don't underestimate what's going to happen through COVID and how many families are going to be in the poverty land once this is over. I know that us as a council have got to support these communities, and I believe that we will lead the way again as we do in other things. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Dukes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to say I welcome this report. I don't welcome this report. I think this report makes very sobering reading. I think it's a really useful report. If you looked at the news last night and saw the report of the directors in Burnley who were dealing with people on the streets, dealing with people in their homes who are struggling, it's this type of report that we are producing that gives us an insight into those issues. We need these kinds of reports to enable us to do the work that we need to do. We need these reports to enable us to work closely, as we do, with the third sector organisations in the district to try and support those people most in need. And the work of the hub, the work of the food bank, the work of BCVS over this period of time has been absolutely invaluable. And I think this report helps us look at how we might support those vulnerable people in the future. This is fantastic reading for those of us that have neighbourhood plans, because it allows us to put that sort of information into our planning and into our requirements for the future of our areas. And particularly someone who lives in a ward of some serious deprivation, I think it's really key that we have these types of reports put before us. I thank everybody who's put this together. I think we need to act on this information, and we need support from central government to be able to act on this information.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think Councillor Brand's indicated, so I'll turn to Councillor Brand next, if that's all right.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A number of members of Cabinet have said what I was going to say, which is to draw the link between child poverty, and I saw the programme on Burnley last night, and it was incredibly moving. I've got my iPad alongside here, but the web page keeps crashing. I think it's paragraph 3.2 that talks about in the paper supporting the document. I think that's the one that talks about the impact of COVID on poorer communities. And I think when we get into the strategy and the 4 ambitions, we need to keep that in the backs of our minds, because it will play through all of those ambitions in the strategy, all those intentions for the year to come. I think the strategy itself is superb. It includes some incredibly useful data, which others have said can form the background and the backbone to a lot that we do in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Shores, anything you want to say in response to those contributions?
I want to thank all colleagues for their contribution. I think this document is something we should all have. Every single councillor, every single officer should have that in their back pocket or bag or somewhere, because it should be real and used. And we, you know, certainly as a cabinet member, I will be working alongside Craig and Steve to make sure that it is high on the agenda and it doesn't be bundled in a pile of documents. I just wanted to say that, and with regard to the child poverty thing, Steve, one of the things we're going to do in through the Health and Wellbeing Board is try to get those stats more up to date much more quickly, because we're always on the back foot with the statistics, and there will be statistics out there which we can find and use, and it's absolutely vital. It's no good as you know, coming back in 18 months time with some stats that we know is happening live right here and now. So I appreciate all your comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. There's no doubt whatsoever that COVID-19 has acted as the corrosive impact of COVID upon existing levels of inequality and hardship. It has acted as an accelerant in many ways in other spheres, and when it comes to massive inequality, my God, it has not held back. And so it is. I've quite frankly been in disbelief in terms of the level of denial that there has been at a very senior level, senior levels in government about these issues that are laid bare in this report. And I sincerely believe that the work that we will be collectively doing will be to lead from the front in tackling these issues in whatever way we can. What I would like to do at this point, therefore, is move to the recommendations within the report and ask colleagues if there is any dissent or disagreement with those recommendations being adopted. I'll take that as a no, and therefore those are therefore approved. Thank you. What I am going to do at this stage to assist Councillor Lee, I'm going to move. Sorry, Councillor Scawthorne, I'll come back to you in a moment, but I am going to come through to Councillor Lee and turn to agenda item 11A, moving a little further down the agenda. Bassett Law Allotment Strategy, key decision 839, to be found at pages 227 to 295. And I'll turn to Councillor Lee to outline that report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report updates members on the Bassett Law Allotment Strategy and asks for approval to commission consultancy support to update strategy. I'm sure that we'd all agree that allotments are a very valued community resource, and they provide a range of benefits for residents of all ages. Bassett Law District Council manages 23 allotment sites across Worksop and Retford, providing over 400 tenants and their families with a space to grow fresh, cheap food, whilst reducing food miles and contributing to a variety of physical and mental health benefits. Demand for allotments has Demand for allotments has been consistently strong in Bassetlaw over recent years and has grown further during 2020, possibly because of the COVID pandemic. Demand now exceeds supply of available plots, with over 80 people currently on the waiting list. Although there are still vacant plots, these are often in what many people would consider to be less desirable sites, where there's limited local demand or other works are required to enable those plots to be cultivated. The Council's Allotment Strategy 2010-2015, called A Growing Community, at Appendix 1 of the report, was developed with the aim of providing and developing a stock of quality sites to meet the present and future demand of the community. The strategy contains 5 objectives, which continue to guide the Council's work despite the expiry of the published end date. The objectives cover the adequacy of allotment provision and resources, as well as the approach to management, sustainability, and promotion. In July 2020, there was a review of allotments, and as part of this was as part of the approved internal audit plan. The audit report had 4 recommendations, 2 of which we have already completed. The remaining 2 will be achieved if the recommendations of this report are agreed. Sadly, there is insufficient officer capacity to write a new strategy in-house, so specialist consultancy report is required. External consultancy support would also bring some specialist expertise and independence, which would enable more effective open consultation with stakeholders, including members, tenants, residents and community groups. There is a cost of £7,000 to appoint an external consultant, which has been estimated based on other similar studies and conversations with prospective consultants. This one-off cost can be met from within existing budgets. Cabinet may, of course, decide not to approve funding to commission consultancy supports, but as there is insufficient capacity in officers, this would result in the strategy not being updated, and an audit recommendation would then therefore not be achieved. The audit report stated that without an up-to-date allotment strategy in place, there is a risk that the provision of this service may not align to the Council's strategic objectives. There are 2 recommendations to this report, Chair, at 6.1 and 6.2, and these are that the Cabinet approves the expenditure of £7,000 for consultancy support to update the Bassetlaw allotment strategy, which will be reported back to Cabinet for approval, and that the development of the new Bassetlaw allotment strategy includes consultation and engagement with members, tenants, non-users and other stakeholders to ensure that it incorporates relevant issues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Craig Taylor, anything you wish to add at all?
Yes, I would just add that the strategy would also provide valuable evidence in support of the draft Bassetlaw local plan. And there's actually 2 policies within the draft local plan that allotments are specifically referenced within. So the first of which is promoting healthy, active lifestyles through supporting initiatives which improve access to locally grown food, such as from allotments or community gardens. And the second policy is ST48, which is around delivering quality, accessible, open space. And there's some spatial standards actually included in that. So undertaking this comprehensive piece of work to update the strategy would help support the draft Bassetlaw local plan.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I will ask if there are any comments, questions, observations. I can see 2 colleagues have indicated already. I'll turn to Councillor Dukes, then Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I welcome this report. I think it's really important that we have a clear view of our allotment strategy. I think things have moved on since the last strategy was published and ended in 2015. I think the current crisis has driven a lot of us to go out and dig and turn things over. I think Councillor Lee needs to go and eat some of the greens off of her allotment now. And make her feel better. But I think it's really important that we have a strategy. I think it's really important that we use some external advice to support that. I fully agree with the recommendations. One of the things that I would request that within that policy that we talk very closely with our housing team and that there is integration within housing, because I think there is a lot of spare capacity for gardening, in inverted commas, and growing in some of our properties that are not looked after or are unable to be looked after by the residents for all sorts of reasons. And maybe there is something that can be done there to bring those gardens, plots of land back to use for some of the purposes that they were there for in the building. Some of our older stock have lots of land around them. Not all of it is utilised in the right way, and maybe there are teams that could look at that. So I just asked for that to be looked at. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shaw.
I too am going to be very quick to support my colleague who's poorly. Although I just want to say I'm really excited about this. I think I've been doing some work in my ward with allotments, and people are very excited and exercised, and there's all sorts going on. And I think it's perfect. We've just looked at the budgets. We know we're stretched, but I think £7,000 for this is really great money, well spent for health and well-being and lifestyle and going forward. And I think if we can come up from that consultation and that work that they're doing, we get all the allotments up and running, full, and happy people in Bassetlaw. That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a bit of information to fill in my knowledge gap. Why is it that there are allotments only in Retford and Worksop? Is there some reason for it, or just that the council's never been asked by anyone in Harworth or Tuxford or the rural villages, etc.?
I absolutely do not know that.
Okay.
So I don't know if Councillor Lee or Mr. Taylor might be able to assist.
If I could come in there, it is one of the provisions that would most often fall with a parish council. So the vast majority of allotments provided up and down the council are provided by town and parish councils. So hence allotment provision in many other areas of Bassetlaw provided through that route.
Okay, that's great, thank you. And just an observation, when we come to do the new strategy, I'm sure we can find a better illustration than was on the front of the strategy that ended in 2015, which had a load of rubbish in the background. So I'm sure we can find a better picture. Thank you.
I sincerely hope so. Councillor Evans, I think you've indicated that.
Just to confirm for Councillor Brand, there are allotments in Harworth and they are owned by the parish / town council.
Thank you for that. Thank you, June.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any, I don't know if Councillor Lee, you wanted to come back on any of those points that have been covered there?
Well, no, I was going to say there are a lot of allotments across the whole of Bassetlaw, just we're only talking about the ones run by Bassetlaw District Council. And I would also please like to give my apologies for the rest of this meeting, because I think I'm going to go and cough elsewhere.
Not a problem whatsoever, and thank you very much. Are there, so I'll take it there aren't any other contributions in relation to this item, and the recommendations have been outlined. And I'd ask if Cabinet members, is there any disagreement or dispute or dissent from those being adopted? And I will take that as a no. And thank you, those are approved. And thank you, Councillor Lee. And I hope you have a restful evening. From that point, I'll move back, if that's okay, to the housing reports. And turn to Councillor Scawthorne. The first item being at Housing Services Asset Management Plan, a key decision 824 to be found at pages 181 to 204, and that's agenda item 10A. and I will hand over to Councillor Scotland to outline that report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the Housing Asset Management Plan. The Stock Condition Survey, the Compliance Review and the HRA Business Plan have demonstrated that it is essential that the Council adopts a modern approach to its management of and investment in its housing asset. By doing so, the Council will ensure that its housing stock meets the current and future needs of its tenants, enabling more efficiency and effective resource deployment, service modernisation, long-term financial planning and improved risk management. The plan will sit alongside other strategic planning documents in the housing service, including the Housing Strategy, the HRA Business Plan, the Risk Management Plan and the financial budgets. Its development is included in the Council Plan, and the Housing Service Plan and was identified as a priority action in the recent internal audit of assist management. The plan attached at Appendix 1 of the report identifies 5 overarching aims in respect of the maintenance and investment needs of the Council's housing stock. These are delivering decent homes, maximising energy efficiency, ensuring compliance, regeneration of estates and assets, and developing new homes. These have been identified as a response to the National Housing and Asset Management Agenda, recent legislation and the Council Plan and Tenants priorities. There have been identified in key areas of the new Housing White Paper released on the 17th of November. The plan includes key information in relation to the current housing stock, future needs, and the resources the Council have available to it. It does not set out individual projects of improvements. These will be set out in the Housing Capital Programme, which will be presented to Cabinet on the 5th of January, and the HRA Business Plan, which will be presented on the 11th of February. Chair, I ask Cabinet to approve the recommendations set out at 6.1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll turn to Alison Craig next, just to ask if there's anything further to add at all.
No, nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair, but happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any comments, questions or observations in relation to this item? Councillor Dukes.
Well, thank you, Chair. I welcome this report. I think if you put this alongside the local plan, which is now out for consultation at the moment, started today, the first meetings took place. I think it's really important that we have our own housing stock looking at being maintained in exactly the right way, looked at in exactly the right way, and giving a nod to the local plan in that. And I think this report brings that one step closer. So I welcome it wholeheartedly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any other comments, questions, observations at all? If not, then I will turn to the recommendations to be found at page 207 of the report, and ask if there is any dissent or disagreement with those recommendations. In which case that is carried, and thank you very much. The next agenda item I will turn to is 10B, Annual Report to Tenants 19 to 20, Key Decision 840, to be found at pages 205 to 214. And I will turn to Councillor Scotthorne again, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the annual report to Tenants 2019-20 that will be published on the Council's website and distributed to tenants. housing providers have been required to publish an annual report to tenants since 2010. It should give details of performance against Homes England's customer standards. What has been achieved in the financial year ending 31st of March and planned service improvements for the following financial year. The report for 2019-20 attached at Appendix 1 will be published on the website and issued to tenants with their Q3 rent statements in January 2021, slightly later than anticipated due to the Council's response to COVID-19. It includes details of performance in relation to tenant involvement and engagement, tenancy standards, allocations of properties and support to tenants, home standards, how we maintain and improve our housing stock, neighbourhood and community standards, how we manage our estates and tackle antisocial behaviour, and value for money. This report will become even more important in response to the Housing White Paper as part of a stricter regulatory process for social landlords. From 2021 onwards, it will be distributed to tenants in July each year. The recommendations, Chair, at 6.1 and 6.2 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll just ask if Alison Craig, whether you wish to add anything on this item at all.
No, nothing to add, Chair, but happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much for that. Chief Executive, you've indicated that.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this report is very significant given the journey that the council is on. And if you turn to page 5, the home standard, you can see the amount of money that the council's invested in that stock, an increase of over 700,000, or about 20% of the previous amount of investment that was undertaken. The list of roof replacements and new bathrooms and kitchens, and also the plans that the council have got for the future, nearly £19 million in the next year. Moving on from that, you can also see in page 6 about the estate improvements that members have endorsed. And I know that when we looked at the situation with reviewing the previous contractual arrangements with the Almo, there was some doubt about whether or not this was going to be a good move. And we looked at a lot of evidence to come to the conclusion that we did. But I think this report, more than any other on tonight's agenda, really enforces the point that that members made the right decision. The council is really taking great strides in taking the housing service forward, and how fortunate we are to have a very good housing manager to enable these things to take place. And sometimes you really do need to go for what you think is right rather than wait to prove the situation, because that proof probably comes along after you've taken the decision to make it so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There's no doubt whatsoever about the transformative approach that's been taken now, once we've now got moved beyond the Almo. I'll turn to Councillor Brand, who's indicated, and I think then Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. For the very reasons that the Chief Executive has just outlined, the journey that the Council's been on and the improvements that have been made, I just wonder whether this report could be sent to those members who have council housing within their wards, but maybe not looking at the cabinet papers tonight. Yeah, I just wonder whether a copy could be sent to them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got no doubt that there's more that can be done to emphasise the journey that we've been on. I'll defer to Councillor Scotthorne and Alison Craig to progress that. If I could turn to Councillor Shaw, and then I'll turn to Councillor Scotthorne and Alison Craig if there's anything they wish to add following the contributions.
Yeah, thank you to Councillor Scotthorne and to Alison. Two great reports. I was just interested in the demand for council homes in the light of what we've said about COVID-19 and furlough and the demand that may rise. We've got 3,910 households waiting on the waiting list. That's a massive amount of people waiting for accommodation, and I think that it's going to be stretched, and a pinch point come very quickly where that's going to get higher. It's just an observation, really. The general report is amazing. What's been going on. I just think there's all those people out there that want council houses now, and there'll be more in the future. So it's something that will be a challenge going forward, won't it? Thank you.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Councillor Scotthorne, is there anything you wanted to say following the contributions?
Yes, Chair. Thank you, everybody, for that, and thank you, Neil, for his summing up on his part. I know we went through a great journey to get where we are now, and it's appreciated to him and everybody else who was involved in that. On Councillor Shaw's point of housing and the allocations and the waiting list, I know it is monitored ongoing. We have had to take housing away from our allocation list to do the temporary accommodation. I know that, which has been very successful in what it's done. We've utilised it as much as we can. And I know that the teams work very hard to turn the voids around as fast as they can. But I'm quite happy to pass on to Alison and let her add to that. Thank you.
Thank you. The waiting list, we saw an increase in 500 households from 2018-19 into 19-20. As Cabinet will be aware, you have approved a review of the allocations policy, and we are starting to commence that review now with a review of all of the existing households on the waiting list. So we are required to contact on an anniversary basis households registered on the waiting list to ascertain whether they want to remain on the list or whether they've met their housing needs elsewhere. And that process is currently taking place, which will give us a clearer and more accurate assessment of housing demand for our stock. But all of the other work that we're doing in terms of reviewing assets which are no longer fit for purpose, improving our independent living schemes to make sure that they address needs on the waiting list. We do have a significant demand for larger accommodation, adapted properties in particular, and obviously older persons accommodation, which is modern and fit for purposes.
Thank you very much indeed. Sorry, I didn't know if there's anything further you wanted to add at all.
Just in terms of Councillor Brand's comments about sending this to all members, what will happen now is our wonderful communications team are going to gloss this document up for us, ready for distribution in January. And as we do with the In Touch magazine for tenants, all elected members will receive a copy of that, this document. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarity. So everyone will have sight of this, albeit in a slightly revised format. So that's all good. Thank you. Unless there are any other contributions or questions, I'll be tempted to move to the recommendation at page, I think I have at page 207 from my notes. And ask whether there is any dissent or disagreement with those recommendations being adopted. Take that as a no, and thank you. Those are approved. The next agenda item, therefore, is 10C. It's the annual housing revenue account rent setting review. Key decision 841, pages 215 to 226. Councillor Scotthorne again, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the rent set levels 2021-22. Social housing rents are set in accordance with the government's National Social Rent Policy and the regulator of social housing rent standards. In accordance with the policy, which came into effect from the 1st of April 2020, rents may be increased by up to CPL plus 1% until the 1st of April 2024. Members will recall that in 2019-20 rent setting report, various issues had been identified which needed addressing in respect of the formula rents, and there were policy changes recommended in respect of moving the formula rent and reletting and moving the correct rent to 50, the collection of rent to 52 weeks a year. All of these changes were fully addressed on the 1st of April 2020, and the council's rent data was submitted to the regulator of social housing before the deadline on the 31st of October. For 2021-22, it is recommended that the council's rents, both social and affordable, are increased by CPI plus 1%. This will be a real increase of 1.5% based on CPL on September this year of 0.55, excuse me. This will be a real increase of 1.5% based on the CPL in September this year. The impact of these increases across all existing properties in the housing stock is an average actual increase of £1.11 per week on social rents and £1.73 per week on affordable rents. This is only an average actual monetary increase because rents will be calculated for each individual address. Therefore, some may increase by more than a monetary value based average, and some rents will increase by a lower amount. The lower amount is an increase of 72 pence per week for a social housing property, and the highest of £2.96 per week for an affordable rented property. This provides an average social rent of £74.62 per week, and an affordable rent, including services, of £117.16 per week. The recommendations that set out increase by CPL plus 1 for the stock at the time of writing this report will result in an additional £389,000 of income in the 2021-22 compared to 2020-21. Chair, the recommendations are at 6.1 and 6.2. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Alison Craig, anything you wish to add at all?
No, nothing further to add, Chair, but happy to answer questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any comments, questions, observations in relation to this item? I'll take that as a no, in which case, unless there's any difficulties, I'll be tempted to move straight to the recommendations that have been outlined, and move to the recommendation at page 218 of the report. And I will ask colleagues at this point, Cabinet members, if there's any disagreement, dispute or dissent from those recommendations being adopted. I will take that as a no, and those are therefore approved. And thank you very much, Councillor Scotthorne, for in relation to, and Alison Craig in relation to those reports. Moving on through the agenda and just making sure that I'm following things correctly, we have covered the report relating to the allotment strategy, and so then I will move to agenda item 12. It's reports of the Cabinet Member for Policy, Strategy and Communications, and that's essentially myself. And in particular, agenda item 12A, Armed Forces Covenant Annual Report, key decision number 716 to be found at pages 297 up to 329, and I'll just say a few words from myself before handing over to Councillor Eaton and then Mr. Brown. This is the purpose of this report is to give an annual update against the Council's Armed Forces Covenant commitment. The government and the Ministry of Defence launched the Armed Forces Military Covenant back in 2011 in recognition of the sacrifice that service personnel make to the country, and Bassett Law adopted its covenant back in 2012, and across Nottinghamshire there's now a revised covenant that everyone is working to, though our commitments have been enshrined within the original document. And what we have through the Armed Forces Covenant is a large amount of work covering multiple areas in order to ensure that we do everything we can as an organisation to support the Armed Forces community and the Armed Forces family. And what we have within this report is a delivery plan and an action plan which identifies specific objectives and initiatives, and an updated version is to be found at Appendix A. Now, this is definitely a team effort as an organisation, and there's a lot of work that's undertaken in the background by the authority, and a key member of that team is the Armed Forces champion, Councillor Tony Eaton, who I will hand over to at this point in order to outline the work that he's been involved with, and to talk more about the work he's been undertaking as Armed Forces champion and supporting our work and commitments to the Armed Forces Covenant. So if that's okay, I'm hoping that Councillor Eaton will be able to join us at this point just to talk further about the work that's been undertaken there.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you all about the role and what we've done so far and what we're planning to do. Just for a brief on me, I retired in September 2018 after spending 11 years working at Catterick, working with the wounded, injured and sick up there. I've been involved in the military myself in one way or the other for over 30 years. I became a councillor in May 2019, and in August 2019 I took on the role of the Armed Forces champion for Bassett Law, and we literally hit the ground running. The first thing was a meeting with Steve Brown and the Covenant team in Bassett Law Council. Steve and the team was already well on the way with a support booklet, and this was a support booklet for the Armed Forces Covenant community. It was well on its way. In fact, we launched it in October 2019. One of the first things was getting this information out there. The booklet, by the way, is on the website, and there is hard copies. But we need to get the information out there. So, as I've said, we had the launch in October 2019. The next thing I did was is visit the veterans clubs. At the time, there was 3 veterans clubs, 2 in Retford and 1 in Worksop, and introduce myself to them, what Bassett Law District Council were doing, what the team were doing, and issue them with the support for the Armed Forces community booklet. It went down very well. Those clubs have got bigger, and they provide a good service to the veterans in the community. We also opened a new support club, a veteran support club, which was in the Golden Ball in December 2019. I was, as well as what was happening in the background, I was also opening discussions with the NHS and surgeries, especially around mental health and the veterans' problems, and the NHS, how they identify veterans when they're the first point of contact in A&E and other visits. So I started to plan visits to health centres and to the NHS. Myself, I worked at the NHS for numerous years, I think over 15 years. So my first visit was to the health centre at Larwood, and the planned visit to identify what the issues were regarding veterans, listen to the staff, the frontline staff there, to listen how they deal with veterans. And it's no disrespect to anybody, but it was just there wasn't the information there for staff to give out to veterans. One of the first things I spoke about was obviously the sport booklet, the Bassett Law Council sport booklet, which again went down very well, and issued some posters to them. That's when I started planning all the other visits to the other centres, and I'll come on to that in a bit. But one of the main things I was discussing, obviously with the NHS, and in particular the CCG, was setting up a crisis cafe, a mental health crisis cafe in Worksop, or something, a little hub. And that actually opened in late 2019 as a trial, and it started to work quite well. At the same time, I was in discussions with the CCG and the NHS regarding a dedicated helpline. And actually, the CCG actually came to talk to our veterans clubs, or started to talk to our veterans clubs about what they're actually doing for us, plan to do for us in Bassett Law regarding the crisis line and the crisis cafe. Unfortunately, 2020 came and everything seemed to come to a halt. We were well on our way. We're doing a lot of work, thanks to Steve and the team also at Bassett Law Council. But one of the things, we came to a halt, and it seemed to be an abrupt halt. But we had to let the veterans know out there that we were still with them. We were still there for them. And ironically, a week into the lockdown, I was working in the food bank when I had a call from Caroline at the CCG to say on the following Thursday, this mental health crisis line was being set up. It's an NHS one. It's for civvies. It's for everybody. And that was set up, which was, I jumped for joy when I heard that. It was an amazing thing. So I'm glad that happened. I've had lots and lots of veterans have come to us in the last 8 months, 10 months, and they're coming from all over. They're coming from Nova. I don't know if you've heard of Project Nova. It's that obviously deal with vulnerable, socially isolated people with problems. They've been sending people through to me, and they usually use me as the first point of contact, and I disseminate it down. NHS have sent quite a few through us. Surgeries, now they've got to know me through the social prescriber. Even BCVS, when they've got a veteran there. A lot through word of mouth, but also they've been coming through Bassett Law Council as well, through the benefits, through Darrell, etc. Now, these veterans have been coming with a multitude of problems. And I've put one of the main problems, and this is behind every single veteran that I've dealt with over the last 10 years, is mental health problems. A lot of them are homeless due to family problems and children problems. Money is a big one, because a lot of them have been made redundant. We've had a lot that need housing, and Bassett Law Council, Bassett Law team, they've worked amazing to get these people sorted. They've helped the veterans with benefits and housing. And if you can see some of the examples of some of the cases, the case studies in the Covenant report, the 2020 Covenant report, you'll see some in there. I'm finding around about 2 veterans a week. In the early stages, they were coming through the floodgates. They were coming from all over, and we have been able to cope with them. What I do is make sure every week all veterans are talked to in one shape or form, whether it be by message, telephone calls usually, emails and Facebook. And the veterans clubs out there have been amazing doing what we call in the military, and Steve, you'll know this, is the buddy checks to make sure everybody's okay. Somebody at the end of the line, if you want to talk, want to chat, or you want some support. Before COVID, every veteran that came through to me, I met personally, and it was usually for a brew somewhere in workshop, so I could get to know them and they know me, so we were singing off at the same hymn sheets. This year, in particular, I mean, I've been involved in same military in one way to short for the last 30 plus years. It's been a really, really bad year for military charities. They've struggled to cope, and it will get worse. Lack of funding has been a big issue, and the lack of face-to-face meetings. As we know, and if you didn't know, Help for Heroes actually closed 3 out of their 4 recovery centres this year, closed them down completely. The military, I was based in Catterick, but the Catterick one has been taken over by the MOD, but they are not dealing with veterans, they are dealing with serving military forces. And veterans have been telling me that they're really struggling with other charities, and that's no fault of other charities. It's purely for the fact is they can't do face-to-faces anymore. If I was to ask my wish list, I've been looking for a veterans hub in Bassetlaw, and I know Steve and I has discussed this, and I'm pretty sure it'll come to fruition. We need I know you've been talking, Steve Scott has been talking about housing, but we do need dedicated temporary housing and permanent housing for the veterans. I think they deserve it. And one of the big issues that I've heard this week, and I presume the Cabinet's aware of last week, is that the mental health unit in Bassetlaw, B1 and B2, we need a mental health, and I will be taking it to the collaborative meeting next week. We need a mental health unit staying in Bassetlaw. We've got to have one. They've been a lifeline for the veterans, and I'm sure the civilians out there. So we must, and I'll be there for these veterans. They need us. They put their life on their line. What I'm seeing come through, these veterans are all mental health problems through service. And on top of that, on top of the service, they've got COVID, they've got family issues, they've housing, all sorts of issues. And I know civilians have as well, but my job is to look after these veterans. I just want to do a very, very quickly. One veteran I've been looking after, which I picked up last year, he's attempted suicide 3 times. Twice he's been in B2. Only last week before last, he's now been transferred to a Nottingham hospital. While he was in B2 before the lockdowns, I visited him. Between September 2019 and up to date, there's been at least 3 veterans in B2, which everybody knows. Unfortunately, last year, we lost 2, which is suicide. And that was despite lots and lots of help and support to them. Their problems were very deep. We've had 2 sleeping roughs that's come to us, and we've managed to find them accommodation. And there's a lot more out there. We are doing a massive amount in Bassetlaw, and I can only thank the people at the team, the Covenant team, and everybody else, the housing, the benefits. They've been there. It's been like having a dedicated team there ready to deal with this. But as housing is a massive problem, it does cause us lots of problems. But on the good side, I've had a lot of veterans help me in the food hub. They've been delivering and driving. We're trying to keep the mental health at a level we can manage. And helping and volunteering, it's always proved to be a massive thing for people with mental health. So that's why I'm pushing the mental health side. So while we're on, I'd just like to thank everybody who's helped this get where we are today. We've got a lot of work to do, but I know we will do it because everybody in Bassetlaw seems to be as passionate as I am about our veterans. So I'll leave that there, Chair. Thank you very much. If anybody wants to ask questions or send me anything, they're more than welcome. But thank you again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everything that you've been doing working with the team. The case studies are particularly the most very, very powerful indeed, without any doubt whatsoever. If I could just turn to Mr. Brown, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add at all.
Nothing to add, Chair, but happy to try and answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And at this point, I'll turn to colleagues and ask if there are any comments, questions, observations. And I'll turn to Councillor Scotthorne.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to personally thank Councillor Eaton for all his hard work and the way he's pushed this onto the agenda. We had got it in place before he came, but by his presence, he's made it more focused, I think. Not taking anything away from Steve and his team, but no, I think you do a sterling job, Tony, and the veterans of Bassetlaw are lucky to have you driving their case forward. As we've just seen, you're quite a talkative guy. You like to get your point across, and we've had many a time stood in corridor talking and chewing the fat about what we've got to do for these people. But no, again, the breakfast clubs right down to the Golden Ball, the people of Bassetlaw and the veterans of Bassetlaw, they've got a hero in you, and thank you for everything you do.
It's teamwork. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. But thanks, Steve. Especially thank you to Steve Brown as well for what you've done. You've brought it to the front. Thanks, Steve. Thank you, everybody. Great teamwork. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if there are any other comments, questions, observations at all. Councillor Brand.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was reassuring to see that our local hospitals signed up to the covenant, albeit rather behind the district council, but they did sign up in 2019, so that was good. I'd just like to comment that the pages on the district council's website that deal with veterans affairs is so good and so extensive, and I've pointed a number of people in that direction who have found it very helpful. So I just want to thank and commend the website presence. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. I actually signed that covenant. My name's right at the bottom of it. Thank you, Hazel.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I sincerely hope that the thanks in relation to the website and the detail that's there could be passed back to the right team. So that would be excellent. And I would ask if thanks be recorded to Councillor Eaton and the Covenant team for the work that's been undertaken in order to progress this important agenda and support local people during this time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there aren't any other questions or observations, what I will do is to turn to the recommendation on page 300 and ask if there is any dissent from those recommendations being adopted. I'll take that as a no, in which case those are approved. Thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Eaton. If you want to remain for the rest of the meeting, not a problem. If you wanted to leave at this point, again, not a problem at all. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I think I'll go and have my tea now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next agenda item I will turn to is 12B, performance reporting, council plan actions and outturn report, quarter 2. Key decision 832 to be found at pages 331 to 401. And this is a report that I will outline briefly. We have the performance indicator reports for quarter 2 within this report. We also see progress on delivery of the council plan. There is a theme of the night, as I feel it will be for quite some time. COVID-19 does have an impact on progress. It does have a direct impact on performance in a number of areas. That will not be a surprise to many. However, what we have here is a revised performance framework, as colleagues will recall, because of the impact in collecting performance data. There are indicators that are PIs at red, performance indicators at red, and there is a direct impact due to COVID-19 here. There has been an impact in relation to the work that can be undertaken by the active communities team, for example. There has been an impact in relation to rent arrears, and certainly the very draconian measures that we were all subjected to earlier on in the year did make a very direct impact on the time that it would take to re-let some of our void properties, because that work was not even permitted to be undertaken. And also, there's a report a little later on regarding conversations with the public, and there's been an impact in relation to community events. Those events could not take place, and also there's an impact in relation to the capital budget and delivery on that capital programme, which has been referred to earlier. The work simply, sadly, could not be undertaken in the same way or at the same level that we would like. So sadly, there has been an impact there. What we do find when you look to the detail, however, I would say is actually a remarkable amount of resilience that there has been in delivery of services, and despite the difficulties that there have been. So there's a real positive story there as well, I would have to say. In relation to the council plan, yes, there's been an impact due to COVID, but the council plan is progressing in multiple areas despite COVID, and we are adapting and changing along the way and rescheduling programmes in order to ensure that we do deliver and achieve the objectives that we would like. So this is not a negative story. What we have is a resilient team looking to deliver and adapt and reschedule, which we are all having to do during these very difficult times. What I would like to do at this point is hand over to Mr. Brown if there's anything further that he may wish to add at all.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've highlighted the key issues that I was going to draw to the committee's attention. Obviously, with a report like this, we tend to be focused on those areas that are flagging at red or amber, but as members will note throughout here, there are lots of areas where services are delivering within target, despite the pressures that you've outlined there. I do feel duty bound to highlight one indicator that's shown at red, not least because it's in my service area. Can't be accused of trying to hide it. And that's the turnaround on land charges. Probably quite unusual, because in all the time that I've worked in local government, and certainly at Bassett Law, we've always been there or thereabouts on the 100% turnaround figure. And as you can see, that has dropped to 16%. It dropped in the first quarter, now down at 16% against the 100% target. That is entirely due to the fact that in undertaking the land charges, part of the search processes are questions to the Highways Authority. So we have to wait for Highways Authority to complete those before we can then finish off. There are delays at the County Council through their contractor arm that delivers this. I've been in discussion with other NOTS district and borough colleagues. We are making some representations because we're not alone in this regard. We understand some of the problems that the county are having, but equally we do pay for this service. So we are making some representations to county to try and seek some improvements and to understand what lies behind this. But I felt I had to draw that to your attention. If there are any questions, I or other colleagues who are in the meeting will try our best to answer those issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now turn to comments and observations. I'll turn to Councillor White first and then Councillor Scofford.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you, because I think that this new framework means we've had the most detailed performance report we've ever had. And I think it gives us finite detail about what's happening within the council. And whilst COVID has had its impacts, there are areas that we should be shouting from the rooftops and giving appropriate praise to. It's a shame that Mr. Craig Taylor and Councillor Lee are not here, because in neighbourhoods, the stats on fly tipping have been completely reversed. In fact, we're performing above what we've ever performed. In fact, that's usually a red and it's now a green. And I think that's absolutely magnificent, particularly because it's set against the backdrop of these current times. And I think we need to be shouting this one from the rooftops, because there are so many cabinet meetings where we've had to discuss why fly tipping is a problem. So it's to be praised, and to thank you, Steve, for the work that you've been doing.
Oh, thank you very much. Councillor Scawthorne.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you as well for explaining the void situation, Chair. I just think it's necessary to highlight the work that our rents team do, and the support they give tenants when they're struggling with their rents to get the money in and everything. And if it hadn't been for the outstanding bill from Notts County Council to pay the rent for Priory Court, I'm sure that wouldn't be in a red. Notts County Council seemed to be a theme tonight, as Steve has just highlighted. We're waiting for them to put their hand in the pocket as well. And that's really it, Chair. I mean, thank you for this report. And like Councillor White says, it is a very in-depth report, and for my benefit, very easy to understand. Thank you, Chair.
Not a problem at all. Thank you very much indeed. Unless there are any other comments, questions, observations, I'll be tempted to move to the recommendations within the report, to be found at pages page 335, and I will ask colleagues if there is any dissent or disagreement with those recommendations being adopted. No, thank you. I'll take that as approved, therefore. Thank you very much indeed. The next item that I will turn to is agenda item number 13. It's a report also in my portfolio area of policy, strategy and communications. It is 13A in particular, Bassett Law Conversations annual report, pages to be found at pages 403 to 443. And this report covers the programme of Bassett Law Conversations from 2019 to 2020, and during the course of the year, 59 events have been covered across Bassett Law. And going into the detail of the report, you can really see the granular detail that is collected during the course of these exercises. We have the benefit of 11 council officers, and there's a core group amongst them that, come rain or shine, are always out there at different events and opportunities to engage with local people across the district. This might seem a million years ago, but flu jab fairs, village fetes, different events across the district, and we have a very visible, and I have to say a very welcome presence there, informing people of different programs and different works that we're on with as an authority, and also asking the questions of what is important to you and different issues that you may have, whether good or bad. And this report really does capture that very granular detail that is brought together of the different issues that are of most concern to local people. And I think there has to be a very, very special thanks to Vanessa Cookson amongst all this for supporting this huge amount of work. And of course, with the restrictions that there have been, it's not been possible to engage in the same way as we have done for a good part of the year following the introduction of restrictions. The report certainly is very detailed, and I think what is worth referencing, amongst others, is the approval and the satisfaction that there is with the work that the authority is doing and with its different initiatives and programs working across the district. Quite frankly, there's a lot of positive energy and positive thoughts there about the work of the authority, and that is very welcome to see, I have to say. This is an item that I sincerely hope after we come through this very difficult period, we'll be able to resurrect in a more traditional sense, and hopefully we'll be able to continue this programme. I'll turn at this point to Mr. Brown, if there's anything you may wish to add at all.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your comments about Vanessa Cookson. As you've rightly highlighted, there are a range of officers from across the council. It's a really corporate piece of work, and you know, I take my hat off to them. I think they're very skilled in the way that they deal with people. It is a real art form in listening to people. I think equally now we can see through the Bassetlaw conversations that this is not just about a sheep dip approach, a one-off consultation. We're now regularly attending these events, and in fact we are asked to come back, which is always a good sign, and people are looking for us, and I think they appreciate that. They see the fact that we are committed to this. It's not tokenistic. I think whilst we've highlighted the challenges to COVID, and certainly in terms of traditional forms of consultation, COVID has, as we have seen, impacted on that, yet we have found new ways of developing our consultation. The business newsletter, the residents newsletter, the business newsletter's just had over 3,000 sign-ups and is well read. We were reflecting early before this meeting started the platform that we built in terms of the virtual consultation that started around the local plan, and actually some of our rural forums, we're seeing actually a bigger turnout and involvement from some of our parish councils, etc. And I think some of this we will build on moving forward, and they take the advantages from some of the technology has offered us. And so we have a mixed multi-approach moving forward. Yeah. But thank you, Chair, and I'll try and answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much indeed. I will turn to colleagues to ask if there are any comments, questions or observations. I'll take Councillor Shaw, then Councillor Dukes.
Yeah, just a quick one. Just say thank you so much. I think reading the report, two things were stark really, is how we haven't been able to be out there, and just the list of things, that activities and events that take place in a calendar which have pretty much been stopped. I think it's just I don't know what to say, but it just shows that, you know, how we're not out there, we're not communicating, and we're not meeting friends and colleagues and things. It's just a stark reminder just how terrible it is, I think. But I think just the other thing I wanted to say, which is a positive, was I thought the YouTube events that Will and Vanessa did at the start of lockdown, Steve, was really great. It just so very quickly you adapted, and I went on those, and I thought it was really brilliant the way they were asking people, you know, to keep in touch with the council and stuff. So yeah, congratulations to everyone.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Dukes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate what Steve Brown said about the way in which technology is actually supporting this consultation process. So last night at the rural conference, we had a turnout probably 3 times the size that we would normally have at an event like that. We had full engagement. Officers managed the group discussions very well. There were breakaway groups. It was a proper conference. I've spent quite a number of meetings and conferences across the country during lockdown, and I thought that last night's was an example of how it should be done. Steve will hide his light under a bushel, but it's his driving force behind this that actually makes these sorts of things happen. It's his teams that make these things happen, and IT particularly should be commended for all of the work they have done to enable some of these conversations to continue in this very difficult time. The way in which they jumped to, and I know I've said this before in other cabinet meetings, but the way they jumped to level the playing field for people at the beginning of this crisis was exemplary. And as councillors, we should all be very grateful to that team for their continued work in trying to support us and Bassett Law residents in the best way possible, given the situation that we are in. So thank you to Steve and his team particularly.
Thank you very much on that. I am very keen to see how far the technology will be able to help us expand this work. So I wasn't part of the rural conference, but it sounds like it was a very positive exercise indeed, and I sincerely hope that can be built upon in the future. So I have attended rural conferences in the past and forums in the past, and so I'm hoping that if this works, then we can really engage further. So that's really good, excellent. The recommendation is at page 405. So unless there was any other contributions, I'll be tempted to turn to the recommendation and ask Cabinet if there is any disagreement or dissent from that recommendation being adopted. And I'll take that as a no. Thank you very much. So that is agreed. I'll turn now to agenda item 13B, which is the real living wage rate at pages, sorry, for 2021 to 2022, to be found at pages 445 to 447. I'll just say a few words before I hand over to Karen Charlton in a moment. We, as an authority, have adopted the foundation, well, we've adopted the foundation living wage status since April 2013, and the foundation living wage is a subject of an annual review process in order to ensure that it is at the right rate. Colleagues will recall that on an annual basis, we have come to a view as to continue with that living wage status and adopt the foundation living wage in order to ensure that those members of staff, all members of staff achieve living wage as part of their pay. There has been a further revision of the foundation living wage, and there is a new rate that's been announced as £9.50 per hour, and that is a 20p increase from £9.30. I have to say, though, that the decisions that we have previously made about pay and grading mean that a huge number of staff are all automatically receiving pay the foundation living wage rate. And so what we have here is a lower number of staff that aren't captured by that status at by that rate at the moment. And so this report works to ensure that all staff do receive the foundation living wage. There is a cost for adopting this of £2,300, including own costs, and that is to be incorporated into the employee budgets as part of the budget setting process for 2021 to 2022. So on that basis, I'll hand over to Karen Charles if there's anything further that she may wish to add at all.
Thank you, Chair. Only just to say that if it's approved today, then it would come into effect from the 1st of April next year, which is the standard practice and is in compliance with the Foundation Living Wage rules. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any comments, questions, observations in relation to this item at all? If not, and I'll take it that there isn't, then I will turn to the recommendation at 447 and ask colleagues if there is any dissent from that recommendation being adopted. And I will take that as a no, and that recommendation is approved. Thank you. The next agenda item I'll turn to is 14, which is referrals. It is agenda item number 14A, a referral from JEC, Joint Employee Council. I'll lose the acronym. From the 7th of October 2020, minute number 43A, job evaluation maintenance policy and procedure, to be found at pages 449 to 460. This, very briefly, is a report that has been brought together working in conjunction with trade unions that essentially works to ensure that if there are any if there's any new jobs or any revised jobs within the establishment, that there is a very clear policy by which those jobs will be evaluated in relation to pay and grading, in order to ensure that that the right approach is taken, and that new posts or revised posts are graded in the right way, and members of staff receive the right level of pay in accordance with policy. This is something that comes to us having been supported by trade unions and the authority, and so it comes to us now as a referral for adoption. I don't know if Karen Charles, there's anything you may wish to add at all. Thank you, Chair. This is an important policy to ensure that all of the work done in pay and grading and the evaluation of all jobs across the council is maintained through consistent application of the job evaluation scheme that we adopted as a council. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you very much. So very important that as we go along, we don't undo the work that's been done, basically. So very important that. Thank you very much. Any comments, questions, or observations? If not, then I'll ask colleagues if there's any dissent from that referral being adopted and agreed. I'll take that as a no, and therefore that policy is therefore adopted and agreed. Thank you. The next agenda item 15A is reporting minutes from the Health and Safety Committee from the 8th of July 2020, to be found at pages 461 to 464 of the agenda. Are there any questions, comments, or observations in relation to that item? If not, agenda item 15B is reporting minutes from JEC, Joint Employee Council, apologies, from the 8th of July 2020, pages 465 to 467 of the agenda. Again, are there any questions, comments, or observations? If not, I will then move to section
B, which is for items to be discussed in public. Now, in a moment, the live stream will be brought to an end as we move to consider confidential items on the agenda. And I would like to thank everyone for viewing or observing today's meeting. Before we do move into closed confidential session, I do have to ask colleagues to approve whether we take that course of action. So can I please confirm that in accordance with Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, and after considering the public interest tests set out by the officer and the body of the report, members agree that the following items of business involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3, and therefore in accordance with section 100A of the Act, the press and public be excluded from the meeting. Is there any disagreement or dissent from that course of action? Turning to colleagues. I'll take that as a no. And at this point, I'll turn to officers that are supporting this meeting and ask if the live stream could be brought to an end, please, so we can move into a private session.
Thank you, Chair. Luther, can you end the live stream and I'll confirm when it's ended, Chair?
Thank you.